Hi, Diane.
Hi.
So nice to have you on the What podcast.
It's fantastic to be here.
Yeah, I think we're just coming up on our first year, completing our first year. So it's a really neat way to do that with you because you are, well, I'm going to let you introduce yourself first, and then I'm going to share my experience with you because it's so um, tied to my own development as I
Mm.
moved through the levels of ICF and became a coach. So,
Hey, well, fantastic. Yeah, so I'm Diane Brennan. I have been coaching since I discovered coaching in 2000, so 25 years. It's the longest I've done anything in my career.
Mhm.
Though I've taken some different turns around and applied coaching in different ways. And I live in Tucson, Arizona, but I'm originally from Pennsylvania. Um, and have been out here though a long time. Had a career in healthcare prior to coming into coaching, so was in leadership and management. And so for me, when I discovered coaching in 2000, that was kind of, I had come back from a conference or some kind of meeting, and there was an article in our local newspaper that said coaching, the alternative to consulting. And my husband shared it with me. This was December of 1999. And he said, "This is what you do. This is what you've always done in any work
Mm.
you've done." And I thought, this can't be for real. But I started to explore it, and I enrolled in my first coach training in 2000. So that's when I started my journey.
Wow. And who do you remember who you enrolled with? Your originating
I started my first coaching with Coach U at that
Coach
time.
you. Okay,
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
gonna guess Coach you or
Yeah. There were not many. There
no.
were, yeah, Coach U, Hudson,
Yeah.
Proactive Coaching, and maybe New Ventures West was just starting or something, or Newfield, one of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I
Um,
had a small child at the time and thought, okay, I don't want to travel right now. And so, though did do some of the in-person sessions that they had. So,
right. Okay.
yeah.
And I mean, there's so much more. Like, so you're a published author. You have I know for sure you co-wrote the book that I learned
Yes,
originally.
the Handbook of Knowledge-Based Coaching. Yes, with
Uh,
Lenny. Yeah.
yeah, anyone.
Yes, helped create Fielding Graduate University's coaching program.
Oh, nice. Okay.
When I was looking for my next step, another colleague in coaching, Irene Stein from Colorado, her and I had connected through the research community within ICF, and she said to me, "Talk to Lenny Wildflower." And I met Lenny in Norway, of all places, at a coaching conference
For the
uh,
first time.
for the first
That was the
time.
first time. Okay.
Yes, yes. And so enrolled in her online evidence-based coaching,
Hmm.
uh, and her and Diane Stober at the time, who was also kind of more of a researcher with the coaching community, though also a coaching practitioner. They asked me if I would help create the in-person segment of it. So I did the practical application and did that for a few years on the journey. So took the course, helped to expand it, and learned a lot in the process. Yeah,
Hey,
so
so there's so much I want to ask you, but I want to continue first on your, the sort of the trajectory of your development, because then came your own book. I don't know the order, like the chronological order, but you have your own book, which is
uh,
um,
back
the
pocket
back
coach.
pocket. Yeah.
Yes, yes. So gosh, the first book though that prior to Handbook of Knowledge-Based Coaching, so this is the coaching community and the value of connections. I joined ICF pretty quickly. I started my coach training in 2000, got to be, found kind of looked for and found my community. It was different than it is today. We didn't have all the connections. We didn't have Zoom at that time. It was all by telephone. But I had a colleague, maybe two colleagues that kind of we stayed connected as a group by phone. And decided to go to joined the International Coach Federation, decided to go to the conference in the fall of 2000 in Vancouver, and met for the first time when we were at the conference. And on my way to the conference, met a few coaches in the Tucson community that I didn't know existed, because it just wasn't, people still ask what sport, but back then coaching really was about what sport. That's all they knew,
Right.
2000.
Right. Yeah.
And on our way back I had such an amazing experience at that conference, met so many people from all over the world, and just really thought I found my people. Though it was an interesting and eclectic group back then. When I think about it, I remember going up an escalator and thinking, "Wait, who are these people?" A little bit of the woo-woo crystals and
Oh yeah.
some other things that were out there, but they found their place too, and I found mine. It was a broad enough community to welcome everyone.
Mhm.
But I came back, and on the way back said to the folks from Tucson, I want to start a chapter. And they said, it's been tried before and it failed. And I thought, well, I never tried it before.
Right. Right.
So I
Discover your potential, Diane.
right. So I had come out of healthcare. I was always a member of my professional association. If this was my professional association or one of my associations, then I wanted to create that community locally as well. And so I looked up anyone I could find in something coaching or coaching related, searched the different schools and found people in the community. And we had our first meeting, I guess, in the like 2000. It must have been December of 2000, because I remember taking little holiday kinds of things to the meeting.
Hmm.
There were about 14 of us that showed
Wow.
up, and we created a chapter. It took us a few months. It was not easy, because at that time people wanted it to be their coaching program that was noted for it. And I think was it um, there was also another competitor trying to kind of create an organization, but we didn't care. There were a core group of us, and we said, let's just meet and see what we could create. And
Hmm.
so by the end of 2001, we became an official ICF chapter. And yeah, and some of those coaches are still around. There's a few, Pat Marum is one, Patricia Marum, been very active in the credentialing and ICF community. But nice, really wonderful people. We've become lifelong friends. So,
Oh,
uh,
wow. So I didn't know you started a chapter, but you also
mhm.
got involved at the head office of ICF.
Yes.
Yeah.
So after starting a chapter, no, so I was going to tell you about the book, sorry.
Right.
But the
Yeah.
other book, The Philosophy and Practice of Coaching, is another book that I co-edited with Kim Gotz from Norway, and David Drake, who many will be familiar with the narrative coaching and the work that David has done for many years. And that was the first time I got involved with any kind of writing, not something I saw myself in. Again, back in healthcare, I wrote some healthcare related articles that were published, but I
Hmm.
didn't see that in coaching. And Kim, who was doing his doctoral research at the time, I had gotten involved with ICF. He saw my name somewhere and he contacted me and said, I want to do research for my PhD and I want it to be in coaching. And he sent me his proposal. And I looked at his proposal and thought, oh, this looks interesting, but I wonder if he wants a little help, because his native language was not English. And I asked him, did he want me to look at it from that perspective? And he said, yes, please. And then I gave him some feedback. And when I did, he said, would you like to write a chapter? And I thought, oh, write a chapter? I didn't even think of that. But sure, I would do that. And then a little while later, he said, would you like to co-edit this with me? And so it was my introduction he had a contract with Wiley Publishing. And so I'd say we worked together, and I was somewhat of the driver. David and I together were the drivers in getting all the various authors. But that was the first book, and then
And that one was called, sorry, that one was called,
the philosophy and practice of coaching. And
okay,
my chapter was on. I'm going to blank on the name of the chapter, but it was a case
it'll come
study.
back to you. It's just
Case
memoir.
study on coaching and executive. And so it was a
Okay.
real application of coaching. And by then, I was already on the board of ICF, of Global ICF, because I got involved with um, one of our coaches here in the community, Margaret Krigbaum, who'd been very instrumental in I believe, in the formation of ICF as well in the beginning, and then
Oh,
definitely
okay.
in establishing the credentialing. There were questions and concerns arising around regulation and regulation in Arizona. So this was the early 2000s,
Yeah.
must have been 2002, 2003, somewhere in there. That's how I ended up then becoming a board member. Because initially she said, you know a little bit about regulation with healthcare. How
Mm.
would you like to work with Pat Williams, who I know has been on your podcast,
Yeah, he was on that
on
one.
the credentialing or on the regulation of what happens for coaches? And so got involved and then ended up on the board in 2003. Kind of progressed into more leadership roles within ICF and within globally, and was the ICF president in 2009. So,
Wow.
yeah.
That's such a decorated career and so many accomplishments and milestones. What made you, I guess maybe I'm curious about how you even approached the whole ICF board. Like, what was the appeal for you? I'm thinking about the audience right now. Maybe some
Yeah.
people want to get involved with ICF. Like, what would be the pathway to doing that? And like, what are some of your best sort of tips and practices?
Right. Yeah. I would say, getting involved with your local chapter or if there is a province or a state chapter, depending on where you are in the world, country chapter, there's so many opportunities, and it's a way to kind of get more familiar with what is it that's happening in your community. How do you raise the awareness around coaching? How do you
Mm,
bring the community together? That was the most fun, I guess I'd say, and learning from each other. I do remember being in meetings, though, we would have meetings in restaurants because we didn't have a place to meet initially. We did eventually pay for some space
mhm.
because we started to have different events we would have happen. But becoming connected, and today ICF has even more ways of doing that. So you don't have to limit it to where you are located in the world. There are the communities of practice. Several of the leaders that are on the board now came out of the communities of practice. So it's getting involved and engaged in a way that you see. Again, I didn't think about being on the board until someone said to me, "Hey, why don't you run for the board?" I hadn't thought of that, and then thought, "Oh, maybe." Just like writing, sometimes people see it in us before we see it. Now I'm
Mhm.
more aware. And I
Right.
would encourage people, if you're interested, get involved. If you're interested in being on the board, it is an amazing experience because you'll get to work with people from all over the world and cultures and differences and similarities. Everything. I would always say to the board, we are our clients. We would reflect as we worked together as this team, exactly what we would find if we were working in organizations with clients, which is a little bit of a rude awakening as well, because you're thinking, well, these are coaches. It ought to be easier, but it's not because we're all human. It's the same
Human
stuff.
first, coach second.
Exactly, exactly. But
Hmm. Hmm.
and I put my hand up for things. I remember in believe it was 20 or 2005 was when the Norway conference was. And I wasn't at a level on the board to be invited to go to that. I had to apply, myself or pay for myself to go. And I did. I thought, I'm going. I've never traveled outside of the US except for Mexico. And
Mhm.
so I went and I took my family. But what was interesting was I paid my registration and then I won a free registration.
Oh.
The universe told me it was the right thing to do. It was fun. I thought, what? Oh, okay.
So funny.
And I was still working at that time. Well, no, 2005, I already had my own business, but I took my daughter and husband with me, and we had an amazing time.
Mhm.
And it was an amazing community to be connected to. And so that's where then I got more and more immersed in it. I would say in the beginning, in 2003, 2004, that first meeting, I remember thinking I was an organizational coach. I
Mhm.
was not internal, I was external, but I worked with leaders, I worked with teams, I worked in organizations. I didn't do life coaching
Yeah.
per se, though it was always, of course, as we know, within coaching, it is about the whole person.
Yeah.
But there wasn't a recognition at that time for the internal coaches or people coaching in organizations. It was a much more focused life coaching approach. So I thought, well, I'm here because we need to raise awareness and bring much more visibility and professionalism to this field. And I got involved with the internal coaches in the very beginning, which now they are off and running. And I would say there are so many more organizational and internal coaches around than what anyone would have expected. And globally, organizations and coaching of leaders was always the focus compared to the life
Yeah.
coach.
Well, I mean, you see
Yeah.
on the ICF surveys now that number keeps increasing like exponentially when you look at the internal coaches. So
Yeah.
you had a big part to play in the influence of that. That's amazing.
Yes, in the beginning, yes, yes. I worked with the people I saw the potential. And this is, I'd say what I've learned is I can make it happen.
Hmm.
I can bring the people together and we can create change. And it doesn't have to be it's not one way that it happens. Yeah. When I was ICF president, I'd say one of the things, so I think I was going to say, my mind is, you're causing me to remember all these things. It was such a wonderful experience and opportunity, and I'm grateful for having had that. And I feel like I've contributed in, I think it was 2006 or seven, the president and the vice president at the time, they were called president, now they're chair,
Hmm.
were not able to go to the European coaching meeting. They had a group of people that would come together and meet. And so I said, I'll go. If no one else wants to go, I'll go. And I was the only American. There was another American, Virginia Williams, who's an incredible coach who lives in Switzerland. And she has been in Switzerland for probably 30 plus years.
Okay.
That's where her practice is. So she's someone incredible that you may want to think about for the future
Yeah.
as well.
Virginia wins. I
But
will.
we, uh, so I was the only American, and it was clear to me we were in Prague, I believe. Yeah. It was clear after the first few hours that, maybe people hadn't listened so well to this group, or understood where there were concerns about ICF. And being much more, again, 2005, 2006, much more US centric. It's
Yeah.
changed a lot, but
Yes.
having the listening, well, noticing. I worked with tough groups throughout my career. I worked with physicians for many years,
Yeah.
uh, internally as their leader, as their executive, but then even in coaching, as you know, coaching within healthcare organizations. And I thought this is, and I remember saying to them, I thought physicians were tough. This is much worse. Or I don't know if I said it out loud, but I know I thought it. Uh, and remember noticing uh, and learning from them that uh, there's not an understanding, there's not a mutual understanding of what it is ICF can provide in that moment, what it was that they needed or wanted from ICF. So there were moments I thought, oh, this is not going to work. But then we came to some shared understanding and were able to work together, but not without some real direct and challenging conversations. And I'd say the biggest change that came out of that, I was in Europe for a few days, and I remember thinking they were complaining about they can't call back to anyone because the office hours were US centric. And I thought that is like a simple thing to change, but it wasn't so simple. My naivety, I thought, well, look, we're a global organization. We
Yeah,
could change that. It
yeah,
took a while,
yeah.
but over the course of a few years, we made some big changes, and now there's an ICF presence around the world. So,
Wow,
um,
this is so fascinating. I'm like, can this go on for 3 hours?
yeah.
Where's my mind going? I'm curious about, well, so many things, but at that time, so it sounds like it's clarifying the role of ICF on a global scale. What is the contribution of ICF to regulating,
Mhm.
I guess? And so,
Yes.
what do you see as the next step in regulation for coaching?
Yeah, we've come a long way in the certification, the credentialing, the coach training, even now needing to have, be on a path of uh, coach training from instead of just saying I'm a coach is a big change.
Yeah,
There's been I think a lot of good progress made. I was looking at the number of credentialed coaches. It's pretty incredible
yeah.
when I think about back in 2000. And so in 2000, I started 2002, I got my ACC, 2004, I got my PCC. Excuse me, in 2006, I earned the MCC, and I've kept renewing. And I'd say each time is a learning process. So
Mhm.
the more we can, and the credentialing process has gotten better, and the exam process, and so the reputation is really strong. The I don't know that that there'll be I don't know how we would. I remember those conversations within the states. I think the European Union has some different perspectives, and EMCC and ICF and the Association for Coaching have done some work there. But when I think about, and I'm not sure with Canada how it's seen, but when I think about the United States and talking with state boards. I remember the concern around regulation was, and I think Pat mentioned it as well, Pat Williams, they wanted coaches to register as unlicensed therapists. And we said that is unacceptable because that's not who we are. If we want to talk about what would it look like for coaching, we can do that. And they said, no, we really don't want to create another credential or another license that we'd have to monitor. So I don't see that happening. Although, I don't know, who knows here how things are. So the strongest approach is for ICF to be that hub. Um, though there are others, there's the BCC, the schools. Yeah,
Coaching, right, yeah.
yeah,
And the
yeah.
EMCC I'm not clear. EMCC is part of ICF? Is it,
No, EMCC is separate, and
but they are accredited by the ICF. They're
they
pro,
are.
I don't know how their structure works, but they have an association with ICF.
They have a kind of partnership or
Okay.
collegial relationship. Again, we started that back in probably 2008, 2007, I think 2007. Started to meet with the EMCC leadership at the time, and had done some work together. I'm an EMCC member, and I've been a member since then.
Okay.
Uh, because they're a little different from ICF. They are much more research focused. They also include mentoring as part of their mission. So it's a little different approach. Some really amazing people. I'd say we share membership. There are ICF members that are also EMCC members. There are EMCC members that are also ICF members. And EMCC offered a parallel credentialing process at a point. If you have your ICF, PCC, or MCC, you can become a certified member with them as well. So yeah, there's roles for, I think there's room and roles for everyone, and there is a I'm trying to think of what it was called with the European Union. There is a paper, I believe, that was submitted or to talk about the professionalization or the professionalism of coaching and
Mm.
the importance of having people who are trained and that they are um, pursuing or have some type of certification or credential that is recognized within the coaching field.
Well, I mean, I have seen, I mean, you know where I stand on that. I really feel like, the regulation of this space is important for consumers, both of coach certification and of being coached. They know
Yes.
they have a trained professional and not just trained in coaching skills, but trained in doing no harm, trained
Yes.
in the difference
Yes.
between coaching, mentoring, consulting. I
Yes.
think that's an important differentiator that gets lost in the public eye. There needs to be a global definition of coaching. I mean, I could go on, but one of the things that I know from my experience with building community around coaching is that the workshops that we offer skills labs and clinics and live demos and feedback opportunities, and we offer ICF mentoring hours as part of our community offer on a monthly basis. We offer so many ways for coaches to stay connected to their skills development and their mindset, which I can tell you from my experience, you need that connection to
Absolutely need it.
keep
Yes.
strong, right? To keep connected to it, to keep within your lane and your professional mindset and your professional development. And I just feel like I'm noticing what the community serves as for us is a bit of supervision in it, in the way
Mm,
that we are helping people get out of their own way, look at the ways they're showing up, get to talk to each other, find, that connection and belonging that you find in community. And so all of that to say, the professionalism, if it's not embedded in the certification, where, and I guess ICF for sure. I mean, I absolutely, we're accredited by the ICF because I know that them to be a very, paving the way for regulation. That's how I see it. Their association with the IOC is really important too, right? The Institute of Coaching associated to Harvard, that relationship
mhm.
with CC, I think that begins to spread, that their hold on the space of regulation and what they're doing for professionalizing coaching. But I think there's something else missing. Like it needs to be, because it's not enforced or it's not enforceable right now, right? And I really hope to see, and I don't know what it looks like, and I don't know how to get there, but I do hope to see more emphasis on those requirements at an international level, because
Level. Yes. Yeah.
coaches, I don't know about you, but I don't know a lot of coaches who coach within their own state or province, let alone
Right. It is
across
global.
borders.
It's global.
Yeah.
Yeah. The one of the things I'm not sure if you're aware or the ethics community and the code of ethics. That is a place for people to get involved. Any of the committees that ICF has, but there have been people who've lost their credential. People
Yeah.
can file a concern or a complaint with the ethics, and that gets investigated. And even there may not have been a violation, but there's much more rigor in that review, and then the education to help the coach. Though I don't know, I would agree with you that it has to continue to get stronger. Um,
Well, and that covers the umbrella of ICF coaches, but it's everybody
right.
else that I wonder about. Like,
Yeah.
how do we align, maybe it's alignment first and foremost with the associations that are governing coaching, the other associations too. But then,
Mhm.
there are people out there who call themselves coaches and have never had training. They
Right.
don't really understand what coaching is. They just think it's a title that doesn't come with
Mhm.
responsibility.
Mhm.
That is my main concern. Like, how do
Yeah.
we how do we sort of regulate the use of the term coach? I guess
Yeah.
is the
That's, I think there have been some, I remember a few years back, even people talking about should it be changed. It is definitely more understood today than
Mhm,
it
mhm.
was 20 years ago or 25 years ago. But there's still confusion. And I'd say just looking at the numbers of the membership, the numbers of certified or credentialed coaches, the numbers of people going through programs, we're in a better place. But it doesn't mean we stop. It needs to continue.
Well, I mean, you've been doing this since 2000. I've been in this since ICF certification, moving towards that and credentialing since 2013, I'm going to say. I've seen so much change. So
Mhm.
for sure it's progressive. And
Yeah.
everything, like you said, the challenge and the that those hard conversations, I think, are how we innovate and how we evolve and how we make
Mhm.
progress. And so
And
as
it
long
is, you mentioned the coming together of the associations. I think I haven't been involved in the last few years, but Magda Mook,
yes, Magda, yeah.
she is very involved, I know, with
Hmm. Hmm.
the MCC, IOC, any, all the associations, ACE, the Association for Coaching. Uh, and we used to, even there were times where they would all come together. I'm not sure if that's still happening, but to be able to, rather than think about my membership or your membership, how do we think about the profession? How do we think
Hmm.
about this together to be able to have a better outcome and more consistency in how coaches, in what coaching means?
Yeah, yeah. So if I go back to, so you co-authored a book, co-edited, co-authored, you became involved with ICF. When did the back pocket coaching book come?
That came in 2016. My colleague Alexandra Ross and I were working within an engineering company on the East Coast. We were on site. We were both coaching some of the people, and I remember having a conversation at dinner. I had one of the high-level leaders, a woman, very successful, who told me she couldn't be honest with her boss.
Mm.
And I thought, wow, you've had all this work that you've done, very bright, very professional, very successful. And no matter what we would try to unpack, she said, no, I can't do it. And so in that moment, I wrote on a paper, stop it. And because he would intimidate her.
Hmm.
And I said to her, what if you just held this up? And I held up this little piece of paper that said stop it on, and she laughed
Oh yeah.
and laughed and then said, okay, I get it. I know what I can do.
Hey, you have that knack. I want to confirm your ability to do that because you did that for me. When
Ah,
you, I don't know if you remember this, and maybe we already, but I just told a class about this like last week because it was so profound. When you asked me I said somebody was talking to me and I didn't like what they were saying and it was coming at me hard. And you said, what if you just do this? And you moved to the side ever so slightly and then came back to center. And I was like, so when they're talking, the words just pass by you? That had such a huge impact on me for you as my coach or mentor
oh,
at the time. I don't know, mentor me.
yeah, yeah.
Oh my goodness, that's so good.
Uh,
So
yeah,
you
well,
wrote
and
Stop It,
so yeah, yeah. Well, stop it's not one of the strategies, but
right?
so what evolved there was a discussion on how do we create something that would help people get out of their heads and
Mm,
get out of their way, just as a, as another way to look at things. They're not all inclusive, but it is something that, so we first created cards. And that was, funny in its own way. We sent them to many people, and one of the scientists I was working with at NASA called me and said, "Well, these cards are interesting. They're like playing cards," and they were. They're too slippery, she said, and you don't have them numbered. And when I opened them up, they fell all over. And and the one and the one I picked up was "Shake It Off." And then I laughed and thought, "Oh yeah, I like order, don't I?"
oh, that's so
So we had an adventure in creating them, and we ended
good.
up creating the book because people said there's not enough on the card. And so we expanded it a little bit, but still wanted to keep them short. And
Yeah,
actually, it's time for a refresh of them because over the course of the last several years, we've come up with some additional strategies as well. But the intent was to really give people something quick they could refer to and just have in their back pocket
right.
because so many people were telling us, clients, we had sent it, to get input. I remember I sent it to a client who then called me and said, um, what was it? Assume positive intent. For whatever reason, we didn't have that strategy in there. And she said, "We always work on this. How could you not have it in there?" Like, okay,
Oh,
you're right, you're right.
right.
So,
Oh, that's so good. And
yeah.
I'm listening to you, and I can see how much of an activator you are. You have an idea, you go for it, you act, you really follow through. So from an idea to publishing a book for, let's say, a listener who's like, because a lot of coaches have great ideas that they want to publish. Is there sort of a one, two, three step you can share, or is there some good like practices?
Well, publishing today is so much easier. I'd say
Yeah.
the first two books, like the book on Handbook of Knowledge-Based Coaching with Lenny Wildflower,
Yeah.
we had Jossie Bass as the publisher for that. And that was because I had the connection to Wiley. Initially, Lenny told me publishers said, "No one will take this." I'm like, "They're crazy. This is really needed." We need to just find the publisher that will take it.
Hmm.
And I would say what helped with that was Wiley knew I could drive it, that we could make it happen. For Back Pocket Coach, we did that on our own because there's so much now that you could actually utilize to be able to create your own work. Whether it's within, I'm thinking it's been a few years, but I know there's so many avenues, and we did find someone to help us as well. So that's the other thing. You don't have to do it on your own. We had someone who helped edit with us because we were close to it and couldn't see it. And someone who helped us with the actual uploading to in this case, it was Amazon, uploading the correct file because that took more than what we could,
Yeah.
wanted to learn
Yeah.
about how to do it.
Right.
So,
Okay. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, and the other skill I'm hearing is networking.
Networking,
Very
finding
good.
people. Yes, yes. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say I don't know that I would have done that one on my own. I came up with the idea around Back Pocket Coach because of what happened. I thought there's something here, but having a colleague that I could work with and that we trusted each other and that we could bounce ideas, and certainly we didn't agree on everything, but we were able to create something that we both really enjoyed and appreciated and learned. And it's phenomenal to do that, working in collaboration with someone. So
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. That's so good. And so just to share a little bit of background, so Lenny Wildflower, your co-author for the book, what was it called again? I can't remember.
Handbook of Knowledge-Based
Right,
Coaching.
knowledge-based
Yeah.
coaching. So she taught me. She was invited into a company I was working with at the time. She helped create the program that we eventually launched, and I became the lead role on. But she certified me and introduced me to you, and that's how I ended up. I think you were my mentor certainly from ACC to PCC, and then PCC to
And then,
FCC.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, that was, and I tell students all the time how much trouble I had with the appreciation, acknowledgement, recognition, and validation difference when we comes to like that role. And because people ask, what was your hardest moment in coaching? And I think that was probably it. It was like
mm,
hearing it land as acknowledgement versus like a validation or a recognition of some kind.
yeah,
You were
yeah.
telling me at one point you were so funny. I was frustrated with myself, so frustrated with myself. And I think at one point you were like, "Do you want to maybe look for another mentor and see if they might help you more?" And I was, "No, I need to stick with this and I need some tools, but I don't want to look for someone
Aw.
else." Anyway, all that to say, it was tough. It's a tough journey. Being
It
mentored
is a
is
tough
very
journey.
vulnerable. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
it
it's
is.
it
Yeah,
took a lot of work, and you were great. And that's how we met. And this has been years now. It's been, gosh,
yes. Yeah, it's
yeah,
fantastic. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and over the last couple years, so let's see, I had been on my own doing my own thing here and working with others. I would say being a coach, having your own business is really it's finding those connections as well. I had a community of coaches I worked with so that if I needed help with an engagement, I had people I could draw on, and I was on contracts with them, and that's how I was in organizations like NASA or our
Yeah.
engineering work actually came out of both of us had worked with people that then knew us from the NASA work and all of that. And so, what makes you successful is being able to be working with others as well and finding those different communities and connections. But in 2017, I went inside the University of Arizona as the internal coach. They were hiring, they hired a full-time coach. It was me and a colleague of mine, a part-time coach, and we started internal coaching there. And
Students?
in no, it was for leaders and
Oh,
executives.
wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Yeah, so and in some cases teams as well, and
That's
but
pretty
this was
advanced thinking for them.
it was, and there was skepticism around it. But as we were inside, my colleague and I, we right away noticed, oh, there were also people doing organizational development work. And so that, but we were small. It was 1.5 FTEs of us, and there was 1.5 FTEs of the OD people. And so we joined forces and became leadership and organizational development. Now and over the course of time, also looked at it, individual coaching is wonderful, but maybe with 4 people or 3 people when you count the FTEs, we're not going to be able to cover the 10,000 people that are in the institution. And we were challenged with creating or charged with creating a program for 300 people within a department to try to bring them together. They were having a lot of problems. There were certainly management issues that the human resources, we were under human resources. So the
Mhm.
human resources folks were working through, but trying to help the leader be a better leader. Certainly coaching was one of the remedies for that, or one of the opportunities for that. But for everyone else, to be able to start to talk and work together, we created a program called Creating the Workplace We Want, which was more of a coach approach and facilitation rather than telling them what it needed to look like. And
Mm-hmm.
it was amazing. I was, reflecting on that this morning as I knew we had our call today, and this was 2018. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so it was pre-COVID, so we were together in small groups.
Right.
But what, those moments, those aha moments we see in coaching, we saw them with those groups of people where we had the faculty, the staff, the student, like some of the graduate students that were also part of that community come together and start to understand each other a little more. And
Wow.
so, so from there, I immersed myself more. I was the director of that group,
Hmm.
and then ended up we had a change in leadership, and I ended up going into HR and being the associate vice president for human resources. Not a place I saw myself at this point in my career, but it was we got to change the approach of HR as well. So, had a group of HR partners who came with me on that event adventure because they would say to me, I came from a strong management background throughout my career, though in coaching, that wasn't my role. Um, Now, as the AVP within HR, I was actually back into the management and leadership role myself, but also helping to create a different framework for how people were working. They would tell me, just like this group of 300 that was arguing and not getting along with each other, well, the dean's not going, the dean was the top person in the college. They're not going to do anything about it, so we can't do anything about it. Like, well, hang on. Yeah, you can. We can help hold their hand and, walk them through what needs to happen, but let's talk about how we can do that in a different way.
Oh,
And
wow.
so, yeah, so it was pretty amazing to see the change and, transformation. I don't know. I don't, it is transformational work, but I'd say more importantly, like to see the outcome of what happened, that it created a better environment for people.
Oh my
It
goodness.
was,
Well, you're
was
certainly leaving an impressive legacy behind you. Everywhere,
Yeah, so I
everywhere you
left
go.
there. Yeah, I left there. I decided it was time for me to go. Yeah, so
Okay. Yeah.
and because there's all kinds of things happening. People can Google the University of Arizona and see. I would say we're a microcosm of the United States. Like
Right.
the craziness that was going on. But I thought it's time. It's time to be on the outside now, and I left wonderful people behind. That was the hardest thing to
Hmm.
leave, but I know they'll manage. They'll do okay. So I'm back on my own again.
So
Um,
what's next? What's on the horizon? What
I
challenges are ahead of you now?
Now, yeah, I'm back to coaching, and that was something I really missed. And so, your point around having community and being able to engage and reflect and having supervision is so relevant and so important because that when I was on the inside and being the manager, the leader, I needed that, and I would have supervision. So that I could stay in the game here. Otherwise, you get caught up in everything. But for me now, I am connected. Right as I was coming out of my job, I hadn't even told people, and people were contacting me. How would you like to get involved here? Or do you have time for a client? And so it's funny how that happened.
Yeah.
So I'd say now I'm more in a part-time mode, but I am doing work with some other universities,
Oh, good.
doing coaching work by Zoom, and then have a few of my own clients, and we'll see where it leads. And right now, I'm working on doing some work. A colleague asked me if I'd be able to take some work that she's not able to do with a group of students at a university, and so that's really fun. Just re-engaging in a different way with students that are um, still learning, and we're always all learning, but they're in their development. Their vice dean said to me, we don't want to go too deep here, but I'm really trying to develop them as leaders. So
Yeah. Oh,
it's
it's
fun
such a
to see
great,
that energy.
yeah, it's such good work, especially I think in education, in leadership and education. I think that's a really important focus as well, because the leaders in education serve as models for the young
Yes.
generations, right?
Yes.
They're at they're front and center, which I think is important. Well, look, I'm noticing the time, and I could literally do this for 3 hours with you, so I do need to, self-manage here.
I understand. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I want to say thank you so much. I'm curious, is there words of wisdom? Because our community is a community of learners. We are a global community, actually, and we have so many amazing professionals in different, areas of focus, including healthcare. A lot of physicians, a lot of nurses, a lot of mental health practitioners. Really great diversity. So, what is it that you think is most important as you're moving through you mentioned staying connected to supervision. Is there anything else that you would tell a coach in development is important for them?
Mhm. Um, be willing to be, you said it earlier too, kind of be willing to be vulnerable, stay curious, and stay in integrity. If you recognize, if you can keep your awareness around how you're being, I think it is what helps you then to be able to look and learn and listen and be better than even you might have thought possible. And not, I was listening to something the other day or reading something somewhere where someone said they love the aha moments of coaching. And I do too. And I would say they don't always show up immediately. It's okay to know that. You're not going for that all the time. So to just be in that conversation, and the conversation can happen anywhere and for short periods. Having been inside an organization for the last 7 years, I would say I had so many moments that I look back on now, or that people will tell me, it was great to be able to talk to you about this. And that conversation was only 5 minutes. And then to see the impact that it had later down the road, to recognize that little conversations make a difference. So no matter what we're doing in coaching, whether it is in that one-to-one or it's with the team, or maybe it's in writing or in simply being part of a community and listening and seeing where there's opportunity for learning, staying in that mode of ongoing continuous learning is really amazing and really fun and really important, especially in this world that we're living in. No matter where we're at in the world, there's so much, so much. It's so hard. It's so much harder than what it was, even when I think back.
Yeah. I think it has something to do with the instantaneous exposure we have to every opinion and every every piece of news that comes through, and
Yeah.
the influence of the internet is always there, right? It's
Yes.
almost lost the art of reflection, right?
Yes. Yes.
Being told what to think all the time.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, when I say to our people in our community that, the people you hang out with, the people you surround yourself with have such a huge influence on how you are. And,
Mhm.
that there's research on that, of course. And I feel like that's, again, the power in numbers, right? That
Mhm.
when you learn together, you grow together and you have
Mhm.
an opportunity to make an impact. Well, thank you. This has been such a blast
Thank
from
you.
the past
Yes.
and now present. I love the reconnection with you, and thank you so much for all you do for coaching. It's just
Oh, thank you. Thank you for all you've done and all you do. Your program is really solid, and I know that there's so many wonderful coaches because of you. So
well,
good to
it's
be here.
really humbling, and that's the other thing that came to mind when you were talking about to stay connected to vulnerability. I think humility is a big part of coaching.
Yes, yes,
That willingness to
yes.
stay humble. Yeah.
Yeah. And if anyone who hears this has questions or wants to reach out, I'm always happy to connect, either on LinkedIn or by Zoom or my email is, and I have to update my website now that I'm back on my own, but it's
Well, we're
just
going to put all
Diane
the
Brennan.
details.
Yeah,
Details to contact you will be in the notes in the
great.
description of the post. So if you want to share your email and your website and your LinkedIn profile, we'll do that. We'll put that under
Happy to do that. Yeah.
for sure. But
Yeah.
thanks so much. And I know that we'll be seeing each other again. We'll be
Yes,
very soon.
absolutely. Take care. Thank you.
Thanks.